All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me and my guests for this December 2021 webinar, the last webinar of the year. For those that attend the Lingoport webinars regularly, it's been a great year and I thank you for joining us. I have with me two people that are very near and dear to me and the industry. They are kind of the industry mavens, I'll say. If you ever read the book um, Crossing the Chasm, I know it's getting old as a business book. It's so whatever, 1998. Renato, you probably know when it was. But one of the principles is that they say that every industry has its mavens. They are the connectors and the people that know a lot about a lot of things. And the two, it's actually a Yiddish expression. The two here are Tucker Johnson and Renato Beninatto. And let's see.
Hello.
Hi. We're here.
Welcome. We're here.
There you go. Jump right in.
Yeah. I'll just jump right in here. Good. Thank you for having us today, Adam. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, whether that's offline or online or live streaming or during a webinar. So thanks for having us.
Right. Now, one of the things you'll probably notice is that Renato and I go way back. Tucker, a little less so. I didn't know Tucker until Nimdzi started, and I saw him at Loc World. I basically just said I wanted to meet you because I think your graphic design is awesome.
Oh, thanks.
I was really impressed with that up front. It felt fresh and new and exciting, and you were even doing some comic art as part of some of your stuff, and I thought it was super cool. Renato and I are the two old guys sitting here. Tucker, I made you the kid.
That's all right. At least I got a Coke or Pepsi, it looks like.
All right, to put it in perspective, I met Renato in either 1998 or 99 at a Berlitz sales meeting that was in Ireland. And I was with a whole different company, and I was sent to that sales meeting basically to make an impression and to work on a partner deal with the Berlitz sales team. And it was a lot of fun. It involved, none of us got really over the top, but it involved a lot of wee hours in the morning of drinking, as you might expect, and just a good time. And Renato, you may not remember this, but there was some drunk in the bar who called my parents on my phone. He grabbed my phone out of my hand and he called my parents.
Well, this was a time when having a cell phone was a statement, right?
Right.
It was 1999, and Berlitz was the biggest translation company in the world, and it was like it would be in our rankings today would probably be number 30 or 40. But at the time, it was a big deal. You were with One Realm, which was this up and coming startup that had a lot of funding, and as many startups went nowhere. And but it was a great trip, a great relationship, and a great opportunity for us to learn, to be in the early stages. I learned a lot from you about internationalization, which eventually became your area of expertise, and we were able to go to some deals together, which was a good, successful meeting. But I think that the long-lasting success of that meeting was the friendship that we established. This has lasted 21, close to 22 years now.
You bet, you bet. So that's just a little background for everyone, and let's get to the questions why people are here. All right. I wanted to start with just some examples. You know, you launched Nimdzi, and there's got to be some things that you found that you said, hey, that's really cool, or something like that. And maybe you could pepper that in with our audience.
Who talked first? You talk first, I talk first,
Go
Renato.
ahead, Tucker. You're the one who has more surprises.
Well, yeah, Renato's been around the block a few times, so I'm not sure much surprises him these days. But this launching Nimdzi has really been a whirlwind of surprises for me. It was about 5 years ago that Renato basically tricked me into writing a book with him, which is the general theory of the translation company. And then it evolved into like, hey, why don't you come do this with me? Why don't you come do this with me? And it's been nothing but surprises. I'm not an entrepreneurial by trait, I've been kind of forced into it. Um, but what's really surprised me is just the appetite in the industry for the type of information that Nimdzi is putting out. It's an industry that historically has only had one, maybe two different research organizations or consulting firms or think tanks even paying attention to it. So with Nimdzi coming into the scene and providing that extra layer of competition, extra options for people, it's been really good for the industry. Now, of course, all this is just a very thinly veiled plug for my company, of course. But my original answer to the question is the appetite that people have had for information. People have been starving for information, and it's kind of what surprised me. Perhaps I'm sure Renato have a different perspective on it, but there's very much kind of this, or historically has been this emperor has no clothes mentality in our industry, which is, people are, innovating, doing stuff out there. Companies are innovating and doing stuff, but oftentimes the real innovations are overlooked in favor of the shinier objects. And one thing that I love about Nimdzi is we help our clients cut through what are the shiny objects, what do they need to be paying attention to in order to stay on top of things for the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, the question of surprises, I think that for me, Adam, being in this business for almost 4 decades allows me to look at some patterns and some things that tend to repeat themselves. But what surprised me the most in the last few years is the appetite of outside money for the language industry. There has been a lot of investment and the valuation of companies has increased significantly. The top players in the industry are owned by private equity. They're not owner operated anymore. Even TransPerfect with Phil Shaw at the helm has, because of what happened a few years ago, they have a lot of I don't think that they have investment, but they have some money borrowed there, right? So there is outside money, even if it is not directly, it's indirectly. And money makes a big difference because it drives business in a different way than we had driven business traditionally, which was more as a craft, as a club, as
An
something
art,
where, what is that?
an art rather than a science.
Yes, yes. And with the influence of money, there is a lot more pressure for business metrics rather than language quality, all those conversations that in a way annoyed me because this is a business, but they're important, but they're not the key drivers. So the other thing that surprised me in this year, it didn't surprise, it confirmed, the confirmation bias was that I've been saying for many years that this industry is impervious to crisis. And what the latest crisis in the plural have indicated is that the language industry thrives on crisis, because in 2020, when we measured 2020 and 2021, we saw that companies had grown at an amazing clip during the COVID pandemic. Now we're going into inflation-driven, pandemic influence crisis again, and the business is growing. Information is exploding, and information wants to be translated, and there is a lot of opportunity. So what I see, and the surprise that I have, is that no matter what happens, this industry thrives, and this is what is attracting capital into this space.
I'll just back that anecdotally. Even at Lingoport, I had I have some very good advisors, and they told me in January of 2020, this coronavirus thing, I don't even know if people were commonly calling it COVID back then, is real, and you need to build a plan around it, and
a contingency plan.
Right. And people don't understand, geometric growth, and we have this is going to hit the world economy really hard, right? And so, of course, that's no fun. Did the work. By the way, we were probably early to get our pantry together, and I bought toilet paper for the whole company.
You were one of the hoarders.
No, I wasn't a hoarder, but I just made sure our stocks were high, and I told everybody, when March came along and there was the run, at least in the States, on that, I was like, everybody take a thing home, But what happened was that none of our customers even churned, and
Right.
that was
Right.
amazing to me, and that by the end of the year, we're actually making very good strides in new sales. And then this year was, kind of our best year ever for both growth, revenue. We're reinvesting.
Did you get a new bicycle?
What's that?
Did you get a new bicycle?
I haven't, and I'm already talking about
this is not that good.
It's just me being a curmudgeon.
But you upgraded from that 1987 Saab or something that you drove until it broke down.
A couple of times that car. All right, getting a little too close for comfort. All right.
Oh, we have slides.
Yeah, we have slides, right? All right. So what actually, we'll make this into a podcast, since the slides aren't really all that important, but it keeps me on track here. What is coming that is driving big changes to the industry? How will this impact 2022 and beyond?
So I'll go first, Tucker. So what is one of the things that we forget about our industry is that we don't create anything. We are a transformation industry. We're a pass-through business. We work on content, we work on things that other people have created. So it's very hard to talk about the industry in a vacuum because we don't create anything. Everything that we do depends on other businesses, on other decisions that other industries are doing. But as long as clients need to communicate with their customers, as long as businesses need to advertise, share information, explain how the things that they sell work, there's going to be work in this business, in this industry. So the changes that happen in our industry are the changes that happen in the economy as a whole, in the future that our clients see for themselves. And in my experience, that future always includes more clients, more products, more content. And so the outlook for me is the same outlook or better than the rest of the world is doing. And one of the things that I like to say is that if you look back 10 years ago and compare it to today, the example that you had about your cell phone in Dublin calling your parents, that must have cost a fortune at the time. And today all these calls are free, right? You do FaceTime, you do WhatsApp, and who cares about the price of a long distance or an international call. That was a big change at the time, that we could travel around the world and have our phones communicate. The big challenge for me in that period was there were no GSM cell phone programs in the United States. And the first one that came out, I was so excited that I had a GSM. Who cares? Who knows what GSM is today? Nobody even knows that, right? So the business model that we had 10 years ago with marketing, with all the things that we did, has completely transformed, because 10 years ago we were moving to 4G. It was LinkedIn, Facebook, mobile. These were things that were not possible with the 3G platforms that we had. 4G enabled it. We're going into another major change in platform, moving into 5G and metaverse and things like that. What the world is going to be in the next 10 years, God knows. But we will be there. We will be converting those platforms, content, businesses that are built around them in as many languages as possible. So I think that impact of 2022 and beyond is positive, is amazing, and we're going to be happy to be in this industry as we always have been. But Tucker, you can tell the but.
Well, the but is, and this is something that we're talking about quite a bit here at Nimdzi, and you hear us talking about the great renegotiation that's happening currently. It's happening as we speak in our industry, and what that looks like is essentially it comes down to prices and costs and supply chains and all of that, supply and demand curves and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, essentially, translators are taking a real hard look at, how much money they need to make and what kind of jobs that they're willing to accept and what kind of rates they're willing to accept. And then at the same exact time, you got enterprises and LSPs taking a look at how they can drive those prices down further. And you're seeing more and more, not that this hasn't always been the topic of conversation in online message forums for the industry, but we're seeing more and more these posts on LinkedIn, on Twitter, talking about, on the one hand, you'll see people complaining about there's not enough translators in the world. There's too much demand and not enough translators out there. And on the other hand, you'll see translators posting about there's not enough clients willing to pay a living wage in order to support this work. So, regardless of which side you stand on that, you have to recognize that these are two very, very opposed viewpoints, and they're going to come into conflict. And I mentioned, this is nothing new. You've always seen these posts. You've always heard these grumblings in the corridors at the conferences. But what's different now is a lot's happened in the last 2 years. What with the pandemic and the way, the shift to remote work, so many different market forces at play here. You've got inflation happening on a global level. So cost of everything is going up. That's not just a country by country thing. Inflation is happening everywhere. And even through these times of inflation, even through these times of unemployment in many markets around the world, you're still seeing record high corporate profits. So these corporations have money out there, and it's just a matter of where do they want to spend it. And lastly, you've got these. I mentioned the role of technology in this. We've always got to talk about technology when we're talking about our industry. And the role that technology is playing is, I mentioned earlier, there's real innovation happening, and then there's a lot of trial and error happening out there. There's a lot of shiny objects, and that you can probably tell that I have a disdain for shiny object language technology, because what it does is it just confuses the whole market. It creates these perceptions of efficiency, perceptions of cost savings that sound really good to the enterprise because they can negotiate a lower price, but that trickles downhill. And sometimes those perceptions of cost, or not perceptions, but actual cost savings may not always translate into efficiency savings when it gets down to the bottom levels of that supply chain, which is, of course, the translators.
Due to the nature of our business, what happens is that the supply chain is finite, and people need to work for multiple clients. A freelance translator at the bottom of the supply chain, or let's not be negative, at the source of the supply chain.
That's what I was looking for. I was like, I'm going to get some comments for saying bottom.
But at the source of the supply chain, you will have these translators who work for 2, 3, 10 different LSPs.
Right.
And each one of these, because of the proliferation of technologies that we have in the TMS space, each one of them has a different system. And the translator needs to move. And because the size of the projects are chunked, so the average size of a project today is apparently 35 words. So let's say that you have a series of projects during the day, and you need to switch from MemSource to MemoQ to Lingoport to Plunet to whatever platform you're working on, SmartLing or whatever that is. And those transitions, they're not paid. It takes time, and then you need to report because the reviewer found a mistake that is not that relevant, and you have to explain that ignorant reviewer why the word that you chose is the correct one. All of these things, although these tasks are not paid and not included in the cost structure, and the productivity, actually, you think that technology will increase the productivity of the translator, and in reality, it's actually reducing it. It's nice for the provider. It's very nice for the final client. Excuse me. But it's not the same for the person actually producing the work. So we have this counterintuitive impact in the systems that we have in place.
All right, I sort of have to give my view here because it's a little different than yours. I'm a technology guy, and I see the world.
I'm sorry.
I see the world through software, like the demands of a software developer, which is different than, not all that different, but it's a different workflow. It's a different scenario than, let's say, the marketing department. And what I see is we have now, it may not be brand new, but the acceptance is still on the early adopter phase in terms of how ubiquitously it could be used. We have the acceptance of multiple neural machine translation engines that actually do sort of a credible job. No, it's not up here in terms of quality, but it exists. And that, what I've seen is that anytime you change a technology, it takes a long time for people to kind of figure out the workflow around it.
Yeah.
It takes a long time for people to figure out, oh, that means I can do this, and this is the cascading effect, and now I need to move my resources here, right? So for years, I've been telling my team, we need to get into the QA space, because it's actually my belief that translation is going to move. The continuous notion of it, the 35 words at a time, is going to move to a machine. And that the QA is actually where the translators will be most valuable to assign a human being, because rather than doing essentially 2 translation efforts, one when you have source and target in your cat tool, why not be doing that QA effort actually in the application and making those corrections in the application? So we came out with software this year that does that. But I can tell you that was a hard nut to crack with software, so it would work across platforms from web to mobile to game consoles, whatever. But I can tell you that when you show that to people, they're like, wow, that's really great, but my workflow is like this. Or where are my screenshots? Because they're used to screenshots, but now you don't need, there's no point to a screenshot if you can just correct it, right? So changes in technology are hard for people to absorb. And of course, going back to that machine, Amazon Translate is something like I might get the quote wrong, it's something like $15 or $16 for 1 million characters. Basically, it's free, right?
Yeah.
Right. So again, as you adjust your workflow, that can be either really a boon or if you don't have the materials to correct that translation efficiently, it's a minus because you
Yeah,
had to go clean up a mess, right?
Yeah,
So if
and I don't
mess,
think I don't think we're disagreeing at all here. Like when it comes to technology and the effect that it has in this industry, like one thing, and I might be getting ahead of myself here,
that's all right.
but there,
Well,
in our
we're
industry,
too long anyway.
okay. Well,
We're off.
you mentioned early adopters, and that kind of stopped me. And it's like early adopters are the ones out there playing with all of these new technologies and taking a look. And God bless them because they're basically beta testing for the rest of us out there. Whether it's B2B or whether it's the latest iPhones, I never buy the latest thing. Let the idiot standing in line at the Apple Store beta test it for me. And the same, yeah, that's Renato too, probably. Yeah. But where
I
was I
love
going with this? So in our industry though, I think there's early adopters, but early adopters sometimes they go, sometimes they are successful and sometimes their ideas don't always pan out. And that's for each one to decide upon their own KPIs. But I think in our industry, it's more interesting to talk about early innovation, early innovators rather than early adopters, because no one's out there, there's no one out there making boxed products to help the needs that we have in the globalization industry. There's a thriving technology landscape out there, but those are all third-party tools, and the nature of the work that we do in globalization is very specific. It's very niche. Every client, every enterprise brand, global brand has different needs, has different workflows, like what you were talking about. And they don't want to abandon all of those workflows just for something, even if that something new is going to be better. We're going to let go of price, price per word. We're going to let go of that with, claw marks in it eventually. It's coming. It might be 50 years from now, but eventually we're going to have to realize with changing technology, like this is no longer the best way to measure the actual effort involved. And that at the heart of it is the effort is what we're trying to pin down here, because with shifting technology, the level of effort required to do things is changing. But back to what my point that I wanted to make about early innovation versus early adopters, the lasting innovations, the things that have made change, by my observation anyways, are those that have been a collaborative effort between the entire value chain. So not just the end client saying, I want X, and then building it. Proprietary technology, there's a bajillion case studies about proprietary language technology going wrong out there. It's not from the LSPs saying we are going to build this innovative new tool and everyone's going to love us and we're going to be rock stars, right? They do that. Maybe they're able to sell it to a few clients, but it's too general, right? And it's not from the source. It's not from the translators. They have all sorts of ideas about how things can be done as well, but they're at the mercy of the other levels of the supply chain. The best innovations are ones that include people from all levels at the table. Not because it's like a big democracy, kumbaya, blah, 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 but because all levels that are going to be affected in the supply chain need to have buy-in into that. If the translators, if the linguists at the source don't have buy-in to the decisions that are being made about things like, post pricing, I forget even the terminology for it, but this idea that effort-based pricing, you're not even going to know how much the job is until after you're done with it. Translators don't have a chance to buy in on that. They're going to stop doing that work, and then it's going to screw up all of these plans that have been discussed between the enterprise and the LSP, and nobody's going to be happy.
All right. I think I need to go on, Renato.
Yeah, you
Maybe
do.
you
Sorry.
want to say something, but, all right. Let's go here. Oops. Bonk. Why am I not changing screens? Hold on. There we go. Okay.
Oh boy, here we go.
I want to talk about translation quality because I know, Renato, you've done some interesting research here. All right. So for whom is it most important and how does it scale?
Okay, let me start with it because we're going through a revolution internally here at Nimdzi with our clients. And it all started with an audit that we did for a client of ours that was complaining that translations were taking too long because there were many iterations in the process of quality control. And when we did an audit, they had a vendor for translation, they had a vendor for LQA, and they had internal linguistic leads and so on that selected the translators from the beginning, but put them through this ringer of quality control and quality churn. And at the end, my assessment, our assessment, was that they were essentially defining quality for themselves. So quality being subjective, it's quite interesting how if you put a lot of people to have opinions about what is quality, you forget what is the end goal of communication, which is reaching the consumer, the end user. So we propose to this client to do a user-centric approach. We are big on design thinking here at Nimdzi, and design thinking is user-centric usability. And we went to the markets and we asked the customers, what is your perception of the quality? First of all, the end user of a product doesn't think in terms of translation. We think in terms of translation because we live in this bubble where we're talking about content in 2 languages. The end user only sees the product in their own language. So they have no idea whether the word is badly translated or not because they never saw the original, right? So we went to the market and to the client's surprise, not to our surprise, because we started with this statement in the beginning, your client doesn't care about translation quality. Your client cares about functionality, cares about, depending on the product, naturally. This is not a generic statement. And this is why we work on these programs with different clients, and we need to do it all over again because the reality is different for each one of them. A consumer product will have a different result than an enterprise product. A personal usage product will have a different result than an app, for example, right? So we started doing studies on diet behaviors in Japan. We started doing surveys on what is the preferred word for car in different Spanish countries, right? Because this is what matters to them. It doesn't make any difference if we use automobile, which is a generic term for all the Spanish-speaking countries, or should we use carro, coche, vehículo, depending on the different places. Does it make a difference? Because if we talk among ourselves, we will say, yes, it's very important. But the end user, will they stop using the app because that language is not correct? So when the conversations that we're having about quality is what Tucker has named XLQA, which is experiential language quality assurance, based on the experience that the client has and not based on what a linguist in Israel thinks is the right word in Hebrew for this. Or we're working on a project right now where we asked users of an Arabic app in which country did they think that the app was written, and we give them a list of 10 different Arabic speaking countries. And guess what? The people in Egypt think that it was written in Egypt. The people in Saudi Arabia think it was written in Saudi Arabia. So it doesn't make any difference. They believe it's local. That's successful localization, right? So when we talk about quality, going back to your example, Adam, of software strings, machine translation does very well in very short text, right? It becomes more complex in the, how do you say, long form. But if you have a strong glossary, you have a strong translation memory, and you associate that with a good, so it doesn't even need to be neuro machine translation in some cases for strings. Even a basic rules-based machine translation with good terminology around it will yield good results, because strings are naturally short in nature. Error messages is different. Maybe you have a strategy for error messages and you have a strategy for strings, but machine translation can have a huge impact in this high fast turnaround, sprint-based content development that has a small footprint. Today, applications have not as many. It has millions of lines of codes, but maybe hundreds or thousands, few thousand strings that are used, while the support material, the marketing material, has a lot of much more volume that requires a different translation strategy. So the conversation about quality needs to stop being monolithic. This is the way quality is done, and needs to be more contextual and always taking the customer, in the end customer, into consideration. And end of rant.
Excellent point.
End of
We
rant.
good?
We're
good.
We're good. I mean, I could talk for 3 more hours on this, but let's move on to the next slide.
I'm wondering if I should skip this slide to get through this. The only thing I think is it's totally worth mentioning what Airbnb is doing.
Right.
That's a very good conversation. Okay, we were closely involved with the Airbnb initiative, and what people see, and it's funny because I had this conversation yesterday with a company in the Middle East. They were saying, "Oh, we want to do the same thing that Airbnb did." Well, they think that Airbnb plugged in a machine translation and overnight everything is working.
Yeah,
no,
just write a check and
write
everything.
a check. Yeah,
No.
they put 3 years of effort into this to make it happen. They worked with their partner, with Translated in Italy, to customize. Of course, the cycle is going to be much shorter for the next Translated client because they learned a lot in this process. But we're talking about a very, very large contract.
And this goes back to our
$120 million. Huh?
And this, just really quickly to interrupt, this goes back to our point about the innovations, the lasting innovations that are happening in this industry are true collaborations between enterprise, the buyers and the sellers, essentially, the buyers and the vendors.
And the innovation in the Airbnb story is not in the technology. The innovation is in the ballsy decision that Salvo Giamaresi made to convince the executive team in the organization to deploy machine translation across the board with a lot of constraints, with a lot of training, with a lot of testing, with a lot of experimenting, and so on. But the innovative approach is it's a management decision, is not the technology. The technology is there. The technology exists. Any person listening to this call can do the same thing, but you need to convince the organization to embrace it, embrace the risk of errors and mistakes, and understand that it's a hybrid solution, right? Machine translation is being used for user-generated content. The framework, the product itself, it's localized in the traditional way, but the listings, the comments, the information that is generated for a property, that's done on the fly, because it doesn't make sense to have this huge volume. A big chunk of the Airbnb content is user-generated content, or either the host or the traveler. The host is describing his product, his property or her property, and the traveler is describing their experience, right? So this is the big chunk of content that generates the business for the organization. So the smart thing, the innovative thing that Airbnb did is the vision that the most important element that generates business for Airbnb is the experience that the user has on the website in their own language. And that's the decision, that's the innovation. It's not the machine translation. It's not the technology. It's the business model.
Yeah, and
And don't be fooled thinking that this was cheap and free and easy.
No.
And this is what comes to the mind of most people when they read the story. What is the story? It takes a lot of work to be lucky, or
Yeah.
luck happens to people who work a lot, or whatever. You know the expression.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that the innovative or the different thinking here is that you see with the Airbnb translated collaboration or with other people, and they're certainly not the only people doing similar stuff in the industry, but just at that scale, they're the people that are doing that. But the innovation is the reasoning and the motives and the vision, the strategy behind it. So rather than looking at machine translation and say, how can we use this as a cost-saving tool? And it certainly is a cost-saving tool. I'm not going to pretend like it's not, but we're asking more interesting questions like, how can we use MT to improve user experience? So how can this be a tool that creates a better value for our customers rather than a risk that needs to be mitigated, that is taking away or detracting from our user experience? And it's not going to be able to do that in every scenario, but you find the right use cases, you find the right scenarios, you find the right suppliers to work with and people to train the engines, then it's good. And the other thing that I did want to mention, I think every time I talk about MT, I want to talk about this. When we talk about quality of output or use cases for NP, there's two broad things affecting quality of MT. And first of all, that's the output of the engines themselves. It's getting better every single day, right? Especially for certain languages. But another thing that's happening is, as a society, our expectations shift. Our expectations shift as a society. And I believe, for lack of a better way of putting it, our expectations are decreasing when it comes to language quality. People have become used to less than perfect language in certain use cases. I'm not saying you should use MT for all of your marketing content, but user expectations have certainly shifted, and people are generally happy to have it good enough in their own language versus not having it at all.
All right. I'm going to mention on the questions, people are starting to write things down on the questions interface. If you would help me a lot if you would put your comment in the form of a question. I'm a little concerned because we're moving on in the hour and we're having a little too much fun. I'm going to skip this question.
Skip.
Basically, the point of it is
Skip it. Don't explain it. Move it.
Yeah, skip it. All right. All right. I like this one, but let's keep our answers to like under a minute. Where should industry vendors be focusing for growth?
They need to be investing in the relationships with their customers, period. That's my answer. I've got 50 seconds left, so I'll say the reason for that is for everything that we've talked about. Everything that we've talked about so far. Innovation, true brilliance, true disruption happens when multiple levels of the value chain are working together. So vendors out there, take a hard look at your account management processes, take a hard look at your project manager soft skills, account management skills for them, and take a look at your growth strategy. Are you taking a consultative sales approach? Are you out there bombarding the industry with your sales message? Time done, Renato.
Understand your customer's business and talk
Hey,
about
we're
it
kind of the
as
same
a partner. Yes. It's the growth is not going to be in technology. The growth is going to be in fostering those relationships and understanding their needs. Our research has pointed from the beginning that the things that vendors like to talk about is price and quality. The things that clients like to talk about is agility and understanding and expertise. Do you understand my business? Do you speak my language? I'm not talking about the language. I'm talking about the business language. Do you speak nuclear plant? Do you speak aviation? Do you speak law? And if you align yourself with the client's expectations, which is essentially turnaround time and expertise, your goal.
All right, good. Same question for technology producers.
Really quickly, if we're in the lightning round, I'm going to say integrations, and reporting. So what I mean by that is clients out there, and we've done research on this, is like, and on average, your average globalization director works with over 20 pieces of technology every single day. They don't want another tool to manage. They don't want another complicated tool to manage. They want something that's going to integrate with their existing systems. So the smart tech producers out there are doubling down on integrating with the systems that their clients use every single day. Another thing that I see lacking out there is reporting. It's the point of a TMS or a TRMS should be to have a bunch of data, and a lot of them do. They have dashboards built into it, but I would encourage technology companies to really have sit-down conversations with different stakeholders at different levels in their client organizations and understand what are your reporting needs, what do you need to know, what information is your boss looking for on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis, and then build that into their out-of-box dashboarding and BI reporting.
Yeah. I would
I lost you
add,
on that
I
one,
would
didn't I,
say,
Renato?
yeah, no, I would say as a companies are overwhelmed with technology, and a new technology, it's a new process, new integrations, new ways of doing business. Think of a way of transforming, not talking so much about technology, but using it as a managed service, right? We have worked with customers where the organization had so many buyers, so many needs, so many things, and they didn't have the budget to have a translation department. Become the translation department of your customer by managing all these integrations and processes for them. Because at the end of the day, the biggest beneficiary of technology implementations is not the end client, it's actually the people who are doing the work, either internally or externally in the organization. I think that there is room for a more managed services approach rather than here's how we're going to install the TMS in your organization. Think about this is how we're going to manage your translation processes using the TMSs that we think are best fit for you.
Yeah, and to that point, charge more for it if you need to, because people are willing to pay for it. Tech companies, account management, customer support, right? It's the number one thing clients complain about when they're talking about their TMS or whatever language technology providers, is they're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, but they can't get a qualified solutions architect on the phone when they need them. So increase your prices if you need to, because I understand margins, but if a tech company that can really kill it with customer support out there is going to be pretty differentiated in my book.
All right, I'll say, Renato, the complication of what you said is that security departments are involved. And that the reason why things get installed at the customer site isn't some pride in having it there. I think most people would like a managed service, but once anything's touching stuff like source code and the like, I mean, look at the recent Log4j 0-day report. Maybe you don't know about that. Came out.
Yeah.
We had to scramble. I mean, my team spent the weekend on Saturday fixing that. And I will agree that for our hosted customers, they got that fixed right away. For our installed customers, they had to, here's an instruction sheet. We're going to call you. We're going to walk you through it. We're going to fix, like it was a task, right?
And they had 500 other applications that they needed to do that too, right?
Right. So, but what I will also say is that the very best technologies, I got this from a customer, the very best stuff, the stuff that he really liked, was the stuff that happened so automatically that people took it for granted.
Yeah. I agree.
Like localization. Yeah.
Oops. All right, last question, and then we'll go to audience stuff.
We talked about this when we were talking about quality. I think that this is.
I think so. I think so. Good. Good.
Let's go to the questions.
All right. So let's go on to the questions here. Oh boy, there's a lot I got to swim through. Jeff, I do have an Eddie Merckx. It's old. It's an 86, but I raced on their bikes. Let's see.
We don't see the questions. Only
I don't think we're supposed to. We're just lowly panelists.
you know, there's a lot of these that are kind of a book, and I can't go through them. Joe D'Adamo, hello to you. Good morning. Joe D'Adamo
Howdy,
was
Joe.
at that.
He was at that meeting.
I believe it.
Joe D'Adamo, the Bronx taxi driver.
I believe it.
Okay, here we go. A true question. What, in your collective opinion, is the best way to evaluate machine translation accuracy and predictability?
Let me give you a quick answer. It doesn't matter. There is no best way. There are the company that is specializing in that is Intento. The reality is that there's no best way. Find your way and for your content, for your type of material, because there are no two machine translation implementations that are the same. Because the type of information that you feed to train the machine translation and how the machine translation, how fast it is trained and so on, is going to affect that evaluation. Seriously, the source language, the target language is going to have an effect in that. We were looking recently at a project with a client with Turkish as the source language. How do you evaluate that, right? You have to create a use case. You have to evaluate. You have to create a real life situation to determine what that is. So there is no best. Make it simple. The challenge is that one of the things that I like to say about our business and what keeps Nimdzi in business is the fact that there is so much complexity and so much choice in the market. So I was looking the other day at our language technology atlas, which we published, I think, in September, and it's probably obsolete by now. Just in machine translation, there were 28 different engines that are available, providers of engines that provide machine translation solutions. If you have 28 solutions, you have none. The fear that the industry has that machine translation is going to replace human translations is unwarranted by the simple fact that there is no one single source of truth, so it cannot be replaced, right? And then once you have comparisons and you have different choices to make, you need somebody to mediate that choice. That's us. And then you need somebody to figure out what is the right combination, the right solution in that process. So identify clearly what is your problem, what are the use cases, and go out and do testing or hire somebody to help you with that.
And I'll just add to that, ideally, you're going to want to include all stakeholders in that conversation. Everything Renato just said, but make sure that there's no surprises on anybody. If you're discussing efficiency gains, they need to be real efficiency gains as verified by the people that are actually working on it, which is presumably the translators.
We recently worked on a project with a client in the ASL community, and just to reinforce what Tucker said, and they provided an amazing solution for a big client, enterprise client. At the last minute, a deaf a deaf employee in the company came in and said, we don't agree with this. They forgot to include a stakeholder in the selection process.
Right, you got to include the stakeholders.
Yeah, what was the sentence that they said? No solution without our involvement.
Oh, ASL in the signing community, it's nothing about us without us.
Nothing about us without us, right?
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. I thought that was
which
a
can apply
lesson.
to other stakeholders at all level. It doesn't just have to be your deaf interpreters.
Exactly. This could be your in-country manager. You decide that you're going to use machine translation, and the guy in Croatia thinks that the translation is abhorrent and it sounds Serbian and they don't want to use it. Or I don't know. I'm making it up, right? So involve everybody. I'm just reinforcing what you said, Tucker.
All right, good. This next one I get a kick out of. Anyway, hey, my name is Matthias Caesar, and I have a question.
Hello, Matthias Caesar.
Remember this slogan, Renato? I do remember the times at Lisa when you would stand up after every session introducing yourself. All right. My question.
You forgot to say the name of the company that he's not right now. Matthias, how are you?
My my question to you guys today is, when do you think that MT for software L10N is good enough that we can move to QA only? Ooh, that's hot for
For
me.
you, Adam,
Thinking
you
about-
have to answer that
All
because
right.
you have that solution.
That's you.
Right. So we built that solution based on a vision we had years ago, and it took a while. I asked a lot of I will say sophisticated Fortune 1000 globalization managers about it before we built it. I didn't go to translators, so shame on me based on your thing. My feeling is that we're actually there now for software strings. In all of our tests, it works. I will also say that it depends on the company. If you are a medical products company, right, and if you translate something wrong, it has potentially life impacting issues. Well, you might want more coverage than that. So you might want to machine translate, send it to a translator, the translator does it, and then you do a QA round, but that QA round should be really streamlined. You know, the current software QA workflow before our stuff, it is really abhorrent. It either relies on the developer to collect a screenshot, which is going to happen like almost never in most organizations, or to comment what the string is, which is going to be like really prone to like either not being filled out or error, or it goes like this. Translator translates, localization reviewer goes back, looks at the screen, prints the screen, circles the word they don't like, files that as a bug in Jira. Somebody reviews all those bugs in Jira, combs through them, looks and says, okay, we want to change this word, sends this back to someone who then handles that. Somebody has to find the string. Where does that string exist in the code base? Because it's not based on the screen. It lives in a resource file somewhere, and it's not always logically connected. This screen equals these resource files. And then it gets updated, then it gets retested, and then, you know, if it's all good, it's good to go, right? That is like as unagile as you can imagine, right? And I think it's high time that we actually use machine translation so that every time a developer pulls off a branch and they're working in their own private workspace, that they can see it in the 8 or 9 or 30 languages that they'd like to target. And additionally, the QA person is not paid by the word. You actually have an assigned QA person that gets the same test script that the functional QA test person gets, because those test scripts exist. And they walk through the screens, and when they don't like a screen, they have our stuff and they say, ooh, they can pull up the identifier for that string and literally change the string, and then it goes through, you know, maybe one review approval, and it's actually updates the source code right away. That's what I consider the future of that. And because you have a streamlined QA, you can now effectively use the machines. And the machines are getting really good. I mean, you know, we've tested a number of languages, and they're a lot better for short strings if you train them. You got to come with the glossary and the training. And the other thing is, when you make those corrections in the QA system, those corrections have to go back to either the TMS, if the TMS is the arbiter of the MT, or directly to the MT engine if that's how you're doing it. So you get this iterative improvement loop.
And Adam, we're over time, but just a final comment. I think that this is not new. SAP has been doing this for 20 years for a language pair because they produce software in German and English every day. Every build is bilingual by nature using machine translation. It has just become easier, more sophisticated, and better, but it needs to be tested. It needs to be, is it possible? It is possible. Is it good? It is good. Is it faster? Much faster. But you just need to have some control loop to make sure that you're not creating the absurdities that sometimes you see.
All right, there's some sales questions, like what are the right questions to evaluate your customer. I'm going to skip that because you should all be reading a book called Same Side Selling. It's the best sales book I've ever read.
And I would recommend How Clients Buy. It's in the same line.
Okay. The
How
rest
Clients Buy. That's a great book.
There you go. There you go. All right. Yeah, I don't have a copy of this. I'm working from home. I have a cold today, so I didn't want to go to the office. I don't have my Same Side Selling book. But all right. So that's pretty much it for the question. Most of the other questions are repeats of things, and some of the other ones are a little too involved. They're like multi-statements. So I'm going to call it quits.
I'm
Thank
curious
you.
now. So send
Send
it
it to
to
us.
us.
You'll get the report. If we didn't answer your question online now, you'll get a private answer via email. I'll bug these guys to do it. Actually, they'll do it on
Didn't
their
say
own.
that, but I
All
guess
right.
we have
Well,
now. Yeah.
This has been really fun to prepare for and to execute. As you could tell, we didn't rehearse very well. But we'll make this into a podcast, and the recording will all be available to everyone. Thanks for staying with it. Most of you stayed. That's good. All right. Take care, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
Adam.
Y'all
This
have
is great.
a good one.
Let's do this again.
All right. Very good. Nice way to end the year of webinars. Take care.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Bye. Okay, are we off? I need to jump into. I have another call.
And I need to. Are we still streaming? All right.